All right, here we are. It's our first live. I think we're going to do these monthly. Did we say every other way?
That's what
Something
we're
like
doing,
monthly. Uh,
monthly.
it, it's yeah, it's kind of a refresh on maybe what we've learned, what we've seen. Lisa Tamati is a pretty amazing individual. Has done actually things that are harder. Well, so I know the race you did, the Badlands race, right?
Bad boy.
More people have died in that. What is it in that, or less people have finished that and have
Yeah,
gotten to the top of Mount
Mount
Everest?
Everest.
Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
right?
yeah. That's right. It's through the Death Valley, which is the hottest race on earth, and that's in your backyard actually in America. And yeah, 135 miles and 55 plus degrees heat. Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
insane. So,
it's
ultra marathon runner.
it's painful.
Very beautiful.
Brutally painful, like and has an amazing podcast. And she suggested, hey, why don't we get together, like we'll just kind of riff on some ideas in the biohacking space. Maybe some people tune in. We're hoping that happens, and either way we're going to have a bunch of fun riffing on cool biohacking things.
Yeah.
We wanted to start off with kind of hydrogen inhalation, and I'm going to turn this more over to you, because I've got some hydrogen bottles, so I'll be drinking hydrogen water. And that I started to do so. I was just at the biohacking conference,
Yeah.
and I was at a booth. A guy, Michael Legel, that I met, super cool guy. He had a booth that was a hydrogen, right? So you could get hydrogen water and you could do hydrogen breathing. I sat down to enjoy that, which was the only three. I tried three things in the whole 3 days. This was the third one, and about 1 minute into it, I got a text from my team that I had to be back at the booth. So I didn't get the full experience. But talk about your experience with hydrogen inhalation.
Yeah, well, actually, I just interviewed a very interesting man, Rob Richards, who's worked with hydrogen inhalation, and I've also interviewed others on this. And it's something I'm going to actually get, a kick-ass machine shortly, hopefully for my mum, because she's had a very interesting medical history with cancer and aneurysms and stuff. But hydrogen inhalation has been scientifically proven, like there's a lot of studies behind it, for reducing oxidative stress. So it's a major oxidative stress. So as we all know that we get more oxidative stress as we get older, whenever we're exposed to toxins or we exercise too much or any of these things, then we get a lot of oxidative stress happening. So it's a real oxidative stress play, but it also lowers like inflammation, therefore, and tissue damage. And it's got real promising results in neuroprotection and cardiovascular health and really acute conditions like lung injuries. But most of the evidence still is in the animals. There's a few small human studies, but it's been around such a long time. I feel really comfortable with this one as being a really valid, scientifically proven modality that we can put into it. And it's a real adjunct therapy that is adjunct, not a cure, but things like cancer, they use it as well, just to help people with that oxidative load that happens when you're dealing with it. So a lot of anti-inflammatory effects. It down-regulates the cytokines like TNF-alpha and interleukin-6 and pathways like NF-kappa B. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, which is something I'm really interested in. And you sit on a machine and you might be on it for like 90 minutes, and there's different types of machines that have different, there's Brown's gases, which is hydrogen and oxygen together, and there are other, there's slightly different things. But I think this is sort of part of that oxidative medicine family. Like I've done a lot of work in hyperbaric oxygen therapy and intravenous vitamin C and red light therapy. And I think this is going to be a good adjunct for that sort of family of medicines. And ozone is another one that sort of pops up into that family. But yeah, that's hydrogen inhalation. And I really think it's I just did a podcast with Rob Richards last week on my channel. So if people want to go and do a bit of a deeper dive into it, go and check it out. Now, there is like different quality machines, Chris, from what I understand, and it's all about the electroplate thing and how good quality that is. So make sure you do your homework. And we're working on, getting a good quality one and sharing that with people and doing a review on that one. But Rob used it in a longevity center. He was an incredible exercise scientist, and he worked in Dubai in a longevity center where they had every toy known to man. It's the sort of place you and I would just go, Disneyland.
Yeah, come get me in 6 months.
Exactly.
Investigating all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I know one of the drivers for you is working with your mom, right? And are you tracking kind of systemic inflammation? Are you tracking systemic oxidation? Are you tracking those? And then that would be on the other side of hydrogen. You're looking for some particular number to change.
Well, it's a little bit hard. I mean, you've got your normal sort of things, like your interleukins that you can measure. They're not that easy to get those tests, but you can get like interleukin 6 and interleukin 1 beta and things like that. You can also do oxidative, in your organic acids test, you got your 8-HDG marker, which is a marker of oxidative stress. Your HSCRP, which is your common one that we use, but it's not very specific, right? And so you can sort of measure these. Rob was lucky enough that this outfit that he was with, this longevity company, and it was also a US a medical lab as well. So they did all the lab. So they would do people, like put them into a hydrogen inhalation session, take their blood before and take it after. We're not going to be able to do that because we don't have that facility here. But he said it was absolutely astounding, the differences in the blood markers from before the 90 minutes to after. And he said, anecdotal from people's experience was like things like their vision would be so much clearer. They'd come outside and they'd be like, whoa, there's a different color blue in the sky. There's a different color. Wow. Like your eyesight improved and things like that. And it has got a lot of research around cardiovascular and neuroprotection and, really lowering those oxidative markers. But for the average person, you're probably not going to be able to get it tested before and after because that's it's a bit of a mission.
But what were they looking at? Was it interleukin 6? Was it HSCRP?
I don't actually know the name of the test that they were doing, but it was something to do with the clumping of the live, when you look down a microscope and you can see the live blood, and it was to do with the clumping of the
so there's a test called the erythrocyte sedimentation rate.
Yep.
Was that it?
I think it might be. Don't quote me. But I think it might be it.
So we had no idea where this conversation was going to go. I'm going to take this down a kind of pretty cool path. We were at the Health Optimization Summit. It originally started in the UK. Tim Gray's amazing. He throws the event. He brought it to Austin. I don't know, 3 months ago, and we had a booth there. At the booth next to us was this ESR. So it's erythrocyte sedimentation rate. A piece of equipment. Now, you might be interested in this. By the way, I am his best salesperson by far. He is an Apple engineer. You see him, you're like, that's an Apple engineer. Like he ticks all the boxes that you would think in an Apple engineer. Who built this? What the erythrocyte sedimentation rate is, you take a capillary tube, you put 1 drop or so in it, you put it upright, so gravity will separate the blood cells from the plasma, and the rate at which it's separating is a rate indicative of inflammation. And so the beauty of this equipment is it's $300 for the equipment, and then $10 a test.
Oh wow!
And you have the results in 30 minutes.
Holy crap! So that would be really practical in the clinic.
Right? Like I mean, it's to the point, and that even if you wanted it for your mom, $300 is manageable, and $10 a test. Like you could, when you get your hydrogen inhalation equipment, it'd be worth, like, then you could test all sorts of things. By the way, I took his test. He has a little biological age component to it, and it had me at 25 plus years younger than my current chronological age from an inflammatory perspective. So he's a big believer in our. Yeah. So that was fantastic.
Hook me up.
It's Core Health, COR Health and I think it's .com, but it may be like AI or something.
Okay.
I can pull it up.
Check that one out. That sounds really, so you could be able to track your inflammatory markers basically, or yeah, I'll go and do a deep dive.
Regularly.
Yeah.
Right.
That
like if it's $10 a test, like that just brings it into the range of being able to run, 100 tests and it not being that big a deal.
No, that is absolutely gold. So thank you for that. And I'll go and check too. And we can report in the next session that we do whether that was the name of the test. I'll find out from Rob, or if it was something else. It was something to do with the clumping of the blood cells and then the spacing between the blood cells, and you could see the difference before and after. So yeah,
it sounds really fairly similar. That's for sure.
Yeah. Wow.
And hydrogen, actually, literally, I just got a call from Michael Legel, who is the one whose booth it was that I was able to track for a short, that I was able to enjoy for a short minute, basically. Excellent. So I think like that's already cool. I shared with you, I got the chance to visit Bimini, and I'm going to put, I'll type in their website, Bimini. By the way, Bimini is a name that we considered for our company, because the origin of Bimini is that was the name of the island that they believed had the Fountain of Youth on it. Right. Okay. So anybody who's Bimini, they're like tying it to the Fountain of Youth. Their website is Bimini Hydrotherapy. They have a technology, and it was originally in the industrial space where they will take oxygen, they'll put it into nano bubbles, and when it's nano bubbles, it actually stays in solution a lot longer. Yep. And they were actually treating like whole ponds and lakes, like big massive places, and they realized that this ability to create nano bubbles with oxygen would be a great way to kind of introduce oxygen into humans. And so they have a full-on bathtub that has hot and cold. So over the course of 8 to 12 hours, you could go from a cold plunge to a hot plunge. So you can't do instant, right? That's not happening. But it's got this nano oxygen in it. And I brought this up to kind of talking with you about the concept of HBOT is like, is that the first piece of equipment you ever bought? Like,
yeah, it is. It's what saved my mum's life, hyperbaric oxygen therapy after the aneurysm. And then later again, when she had cancer, it was a really good adjunct thing to have in it. But from the aneurysm and the stroke, she'd be dead without it. Like there was no two ways about it. It was, and I run a hyperbaric oxygen clinic and have done for a number of years now. And it is the most powerful. And I think that, the hyperbaric, the limitations with hyperbaric is, expense for the equipment and stuff, but also getting into a hyperbaric chamber can be quite difficult for someone who's disabled, like I had to be really creative for how I got my mum in because she was paralyzed at the time originally. So I had to get a lift thing and then get her in somehow, and it was a mission. And people with strokes and stuff, they have to take one step up into our chamber and get in. And so it's a bit of a mission in that respect, which is a bit of a shame. But basically, in a nutshell, what hyperbaric oxygen does, and why I'm interested in this nano oxygen therapy for other people who can't do hyperbaric, hyperbaric is you are under pressure. So you are either 1.5 atmospheres, 1.7, 2 atmospheres, depending on the clinic, 2.5, 3 atmospheres, even in the hospital sort of setting. And this extra pressure compresses the size of the oxygen molecules down so that they're smaller, and then they dissolve, a bit like the nano story, they dissolve into the plasma of the blood, and they're no longer attached to the red blood cell, right? Because here at sea level, we have to attach it to a red blood cell, which is quite a big cell in itself. It can't get through inflamed areas. It can only carry, we're all at 96 to 98% saturation here at sea level. We can't get any higher. Yeah. So when you're in the hyperbaric chamber, it's dissolving into the plasma. It's no longer reliant on the red blood cells. And so you can flood the body with 10 to 12 times the amount of oxygen that you would get here at sea level, right? And what that does, it also crosses the blood-brain barrier because it's the molecule size of the oxygen, or the size of the oxygen is smaller. It can cross the blood-brain barrier. It can get to the cells that are damaged. If you have any sort of neurodegeneration, a TBI, concussion, stroke, anything like that, brain fog, post-COVID, any of those types of things. Then also for sports injuries, if you've got a ripped tendon or you've broken your leg and you want it to heal faster, this will help heal it at a much, much faster rate. It releases stem cells, so it takes about 20 sessions for the stem cell release side of the equation to be effective. That is shown in studies. So after 20 sessions in a pretty short proximity, so we recommend 3 to 5 sessions a week for a month or so, and after 20 sessions, that's when we see the stem cell production in the blood go up. And of course, stem cells are your base mechanism for healing the body, whatever part. Repairing, so it also lowers inflammation and it creates new blood vessels and capillaries. And I've seen this in my client. I had a client he was going to have a stent, like he had a blockage in one of the arteries, and he did a whole lot of hyperbaric actually for a broken leg. But what they found was that the capillaries started to go around this blockage and reroute. So incredible, right?
A natural heart bypass,
natural heart bypass in this case. It's an N of 1, of course, but it does. It is known to do that. It is, create these new capillaries and new vascularization. So that's really powerful. So you add all of that up, and we also use it as an adjunct for cancer. Once again, it's not a cure for cancer, anybody, but it is something that we can use for improving quality of life, and it is something that helps because cancer is anaerobic, right? It doesn't like oxygen, and then you surround it with oxygen, and it is a powerful combination with intravenous vitamin C, for example. So what we usually do is we have our cancer clients, they go and have an intravenous vitamin C, and then we pop them straight into the chamber while the intravenous vitamin C is in the body, and that's like a double whammy. I interviewed Dr. Dom D'Agostino, and he actually had done clinical research where you look down on a microscope into a hyperbaric with, in this case, it was a mouse model, and they could watch in the hyperbaric with intravenous vitamin C in the blood cells in the bodies of these mice, just blowing the cancer cells to smithereens. Like through the microscope, he could see them blowing up. So really interesting, and I probably butchered that. Sorry, Dom, go and listen to the a while ago since I interviewed him on that. But I always have this picture of them blowing them up. So that's a really good combination, and quality of life, of course, as well. So in the case of my mum, who she had a massive aneurysm, and people who are on my podcast have heard me talk ad nauseum about mum, but for your audience, she had a massive aneurysm, age 74, we're told she will never do anything again. She was basically like a baby, not much over a vegetative state. And hyperbaric was the linchpin in her rehabilitation.
So were you already a fan of hyperbaric at that point, or was that you dug in, did the research, and we got to try this?
At that point, I was like a crazy ultra marathon runner, more worried about performance than anything else. I hadn't actually come across hyperbaric oxygen therapy at all. But when I was, faced with this dire situation, I went to the world of the internet and started researching, and I haven't come out. And 10 years later, you and I are both deep in the longevity science now. But that was the impetus for me getting into it, was to try to save her life, basically, because we were given absolutely no hope. And I've written a book about that story, and it's called Relentless. And it wasn't, like hyperbaric plus massive physical therapy, plus, vestibular training, plus ketones, plus, keto diets and supplements and a whole lot of other things, including my Vital C. So it was a whole plethora of things, but I'd say the linchpin for her in those early days was definitely the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and a lot of sessions. You do have to have a fair number of sessions. That's the other caveat to it.
Yeah. And I've heard the same thing. Like, you really have to get a protocol. 20 sessions sounds like the number that I've heard from Jason Saunders. I don't know if you've interviewed Jason.
Yeah, I've interviewed Jason, and I take a lot of my cues from Jason, and Dr. Scott Shearer is another one. 20 minimum. Like, that is you 10 to 20 would be a longevity protocol, right? For someone who's healthy like us, and we just want to, a couple of times a year go and do 10 to 20 sessions just to make sure we maintain our body and our, stem cells and all the rest of it over 20. And then if you're having something like Mum had, we would do a protocol of 40, and then we'd have a month off, and then another 40, and then a month off, and then another 40. But then she was extreme, right? She was absolutely extreme.
Yeah,
but
you said almost vegetative is what.
Yeah, like really, really badly brain damaged. And then like 4 years ago, unfortunately, she also got brain cancer and was given weeks to live. Like,
of course, right?
Like the universe was just like slapping my family around like no tomorrow. So she ended up with brain cancer, probably from, partially from the damage that she sustained during the aneurysm. And it was also EBV positive. So Epstein-Barr virus can cause this type of lymphoma. It was a CNS lymphoma. Something for people to note, that these things like Epstein-Barr, which a lot of us have had, increase your risk for certain types of cancers. So she had this cancer in any case. And half of her brain was covered with tumors, half of her brain, like on the CT scan. And they said they took out the one major tumor that they could reach, and they did the pathology, and it came back, really aggressive CNS lymphoma. They said, like, she's too old for anything. She won't survive a bone, marrow graft or anything like that, transplant. She get ready to die, go home, get your affairs in order. There's absolutely nothing you can do. So I've now written a book called What Your Oncologist Isn't Telling You, and it's all on the metabolic approach to cancer. And Mum's sitting on the bicycle next to me in the room watching television, and she's not dead. And that's 4 years ago. And you never want to say you're cured of cancer, because it's a tricky beast that can change its metabolism.
Yeah.
But we attack it, and we're on the front foot all the time. So we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that it doesn't come back and bite us in the butt, so to speak. And we hope that we'll be successful. So I've written a book called What Your Oncologist Isn't Telling You, which is actually an audio book of all 21 of. Yeah,
it's almost like maybe it should be What Your Oncologist Doesn't Know, right? Like, because I believe in just maybe altruistic to a fault. Like these oncologists are telling you, like, your mom is going to pass. There's nothing they can do. Like they're sharing their beliefs. They're not hiding anything from you. They're actually being brutally honest with their own limited knowledge. Now,
yes,
you were doing hyperbaric chamber treatments to kind of revive her, resuscitate her from the stroke, right? And then did you kind of stop at some point? And then
so I had backed off. Like I had backed off for, we'd gotten a bit lax, and we'd do the odd one, but we weren't doing it religiously at that point. And then when that hit, of course, I re-engaged that. But not only that, obviously, there was the metabolic approach to cancer was very much about using things like off-label drug combinations. So things like metformin and atorvastatin and doxycycline and things that are commonly used to block different pathways to feed the cancers, which is not that well known. I mean, there's a lady called Jane McClelland, who, if you haven't interviewed her, you have to interview her. She's written a book called How to Starve Cancer, and she has a course in it as well. And this was a bit of a Bible for me. It was complex, but it helped me understand how to block different pathways to feeding the tumor. And so we did that, and we did peptides, and we did so there's certain peptides that can be helpful in this case. Things like thymosin alpha-1, which is a peptide that we commonly use, can be helpful in the fact that you're trying to improve your immune system, right? So because cancer gets a foothold when your immune surveillance goes down. So if you can increase your natural killer cell activity and all that, so you're going to help it from reoccurring perhaps, or prevention from ever getting it. So we did things like that, and then we did PNC 27 and a few other things, under the guidance of Dr. Elizabeth Youth, who I know that you're friends with as well.
Wow, she's amazing.
She's my mentor, and she's actually scientific advisor for my biotech company, Avum Labs, and she's just a bomb. Saved Mum so many times. So it was all under her guidance. But, that was that aspect. Then there was a strict keto diet. She had to, cut out all the good things in life, unfortunately.
all the fun stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately. But
when you get rid of that, because like there's probably people listening who's like, I would never do that. When you get rid of it, the cravings for it goes away. Like you get your gut biome right. Now you don't have the craving for the Twinkies. Like I have things that I've given up that are like, there's a nostalgia piece. Like it's way back, but it's not like I crave it. It's like I remember having it and enjoying it in the past.
Thing about
yeah. So it's not this, oh my God, your life is over because you can't ever have a sweet again. And the reality is like, you can break the rules. You just understand that there's a cost, right? So you got to be very mindful about when and if you're going to break the rules. I think that's important to share.
In fact, on that point, Chris, is ketones. I'm a huge fan of ketones, exogenous ketones, because so this was very helpful too in this case with mum, but also I use it a lot for my metabolically, deranged patients or clients that have metabolic syndromes or pre-diabetes, diabetes, that type of thing. Also athletes wanting performance. So exogenous ketones. I love a product called Kinetic. Have you interviewed Devon Price?
No.
Check this guy out. I'll connect you after. So they have a company called Kinetic, and there's some other good products out there as well. But ketones, exogenous ketones, are just so powerful as a therapeutic. Like they can be anti-infection. They're also providing, like if you've had a brain injury, your ability to uptake glucose is really impaired. You cannot get the glucose into the cells, and they start to starve and they die, right? And yeah. So when you've had a brain injury, say you got knocked on the head playing football or something like that, you don't want to go high carb and have things like Ensure, what they give you in the hospital, which is the worst thing you can possibly do for your brain. You want to have ketones because ketones are an alternate fuel source that don't use insulin to get into the cell. So when you have ketones coming into the mix, they go straight in as a fuel source, and then your body stops craving. So this is really good also for people wanting to lose weight, by the way, hugely important, because you can have these, like I just had a ketone drink before. Now I've got mum on Kinetic, the high-powered stuff, and I'm just taking the ketone salts, so a little bit cheaper. And the ketone salts are pretty good, but the Kinetic is sort of the next level, therapeutic level of ketones. And that, with her massive brain injuries that she has, gives her brain energy and focus. And when she's on ketones to when she's not on ketones is like night and day. Like she's like really awake or completely, not with it. And I do that 3 times a day to keep her going. Also,
what company is that?
Kinetic, Kenetik, Kinetic.
Okay.
Absolutely top notch. Again, Dr. Youth put me on to that, or her team did, as being a really good product that she loved. And so whatever she tells me to do, I jump. And so mum has that, and I've bought that now and importing that into New Zealand and love the product. So for anyone who wants more energy, more focus, like before you come on a podcast like this and you've got to be on, have some ketones and you'll be away, right? It's really powerful. Athletes who want to be in ketosis and want to help support ketosis, or if you're trying to do ketosis and keto diet, but that initial phase is brutal, right? The keto flu and all of that. If you take exogenous ketones, you will make that transition a much easier thing, and it will take away the cravings. So if you're trying to get off sugar, this is a beautiful way to do it because it just provides the food to the cell, so the cell stops yelling and cravings and sending out the messages. Because it's actually got the fuel. And the beautiful thing with ketones, Chris, is that they don't have as much exhaust. So they don't create as much oxidative stress as glucose does. So you have less on there. Yeah, so a win-win-win, basically.
So how would you compare and contrast? Like MCT is known to be a very good. Is it a ketone? Like it's not a ketone, but it sits in the same place, or is it a ketone?
Yeah, so it does. I've forgotten the process, but it's sort of supportive. But then some people can't take MCT oils. Like certain oils for certain people can be problematic if you've got problems with your gallbladder, if you've got problems with fat absorption issues, if you've got cholesterol issues, then maybe not the best choice. But it is a precursor to the ketones, so it is a good thing for most people. But not as powerful as actually taking the ketone. So I take often the ketone salts, which is just DBHB, which is D-beta hydroxybutyrate, and or the DLBHB, if I can get it. And then these are attached to magnesium, potassium, sodium, some sort of combination of those. And I usually buy them in pure, magnesium and potassium, and then mix them as I need, whatever I think my body needs at the time. The problem with the salts is that, you will get a digestive response, you might get a bit of diarrhea or something if you overdo it. So there's a limit to the amount that you can take. And so, it can be a bit of a digestive stress on the system in that regard, although you might be getting extra magnesium, which is probably good for all of us, and a little bit of potassium that's good for all of us, for most of us. Yeah. So the salts are a cheaper alternative. But the ketone, there's ketone esters, and then there's R13-butanediol. So Kinetic has got a mixture of ketone esters and R13-butanediol. And these are a mixture of slow and long acting ketones. So you have that nice steady state for a fair few hours, which is fantastic. And I've done, podcasts with quite a few ketone experts. HVMN is another one that does a really good ketone product. But I find the Kinetic tastes awesome as well. They do use it to get people off alcohol too. So if you're struggling with an alcohol addiction, ketones, especially this R13-butanediol, is actually an alcohol. It's not an alcohol in the sense that it's bad for you,
right?
And it's detrimental, but it can actually help alcoholics get off alcohol. I can't remember all the details on how it does it, but it sort of weans the body off. If you can get off using these ketone products to get off alcohol, then they do that as well. So it's got many, many uses, ketones. Oh, also for epilepsy and people having seizures and that type of thing. That's where it was initially used for kids with, severe epilepsy and having to do severely strict keto diets. They found that the ketones could help with that as well.
Interesting. Now to roll back, right? So we were talking about Bimini and nano oxygen bubbles and the potential benefit here, right? So you outlined HBOT, you've got pressure, you're actually getting oxygen into you systemically, not through the classic path of breathing, or maybe some is intake. You do intake, but it actually can get dispersed throughout the actual tissue, not just with the blood cells. And it has there are healing benefits. Like it's been a treatment for wound healing in traditional medicine for a long time. Now, this Bimini is interesting because it's these nano oxygen particles, and you can actually absorb it through your skin. And one of the examples, I went out, their facility happens to be here in Houston. So I got to drive out to their facility. I got to take a bath in their fancy bath with the, nano oxygen bubbles. I'll be honest, I didn't really feel anything like that, but I think a lot of people come out of an HBOT treatment and they're like, I don't really feel anything. It's this accumulation that's important. One thing he said, and I think this is why I mentioned it to you the other day, is that they can do things as simple as these nano oxygen foot baths and notice that they're getting increased oxygen levels, up at the temple where they're measuring it. Wow. So I think, that's a pretty powerful, possibility, right? Like if these nano bubbles do infiltrate the skin and then actually do get transported, that oxygen gets transported into other places other than just the blood. I think that's
what a great alternative to HBOT, or additional, because you don't want to always go to a clinic where this is if that's really what's happening and it's getting through, because you're a nanoscientist. To explain what is a nano, what do they mean by nano particles?
When people say nano, the definition is where something has been intentionally created at a nanoscale. So that's just really super duper small, right? But it is intentional. And so as an example, cat litter is a nanomaterial, but you wouldn't consider it a nanomaterial because it's not intentionally made nano. That's just they actually mine. I don't know if you know this. They mine cat litter. Cat litter is a mined substance. You're not actually producing it. And it's got nano shapes. So what I mean by that in this context is actually extremely small shapes that can hold the odor, right? These are small particles. So in some sense, it's a nanoparticle. In the definition of what nanoparticles mean and nanotechnology means, it wasn't created to be nano. That's just how it naturally occurs. So that's what the nano means. And then this, nano just opens you up. There are situations where, and this can go forwards and backwards, meaning there's situations where having nanoparticles makes them significantly more bioavailable, and that's advantageous, which I think is probably true in these nano oxygen particles. But there's other situations. So for instance, if you're using a sunscreen that has zinc, using nano zinc is a bad idea, right?
Oh.
It actually clogged. I had a conversation with Dr. Bauman, who was actually at the Biohacking event. And when I interviewed him, they talk about how if you're using these nano zinc sunscreens, they're actually blocking pores and stopping hair growth, right? So nano doesn't necessarily, I mean, I think in general, like
unwanted hair on your face, I'm thinking, ladies.
Say that again.
Unwanted hair on their face, that might be good for ladies.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like put that sunscreen any place that you don't want hair. Yeah, and I mean the next debate would be, is that a healthy way to kill it? Maybe, like potentially. So I like how you think. Like there's a positive here. We can use it. Yeah, so I think in general nano is probably more bioavailable and probably beneficial. But like you got to be careful making it's not a carte blanche statement. And so that's kind of where nano sits. And so if you're able to get these nano oxygen in through the skin, right, and then it gets into the bloodstream, not necessarily connected to a hemoglobin molecule, then it can if it's transporting, that's great. And I don't remember the data, right? Because you're right. Like if we're at sea level, we're at 98% oxygen saturation. There's not much more. You really, if you want to super saturate you physically, then you actually have to get more oxygen in, and maybe a nanobubble is a way to do that. I'll have to double check with I think his name was Jason. Is Justin? Maybe it's Justin. With Bimini and talk about what were they measuring up at the temple.
How do they measure the particularly up in the brain? Because it would suggest that it crosses the blood-brain barrier without a red blood cell, just like it does with HBOT, right? It just crosses the brain barrier.
And in reality, if you just saw it go from 98 to 100, right? Like, right, that's going to, clearly that's not 100%. It's the saturation of hemoglobin. If you were able to get to 100, then positive things are happening, right? Like, and maybe it is that.
It may be a lot more. It may be a lot more because it's not attached to the red blood cell. Because that, when you're measuring it with an SpO2 thing on the finger, we're measuring it via the red blood cell. So if it's dissolving, in the case of hyperbaric, we know that it dissolves into the plasma, and that would probably be what's happening with the Bimini.
I think so, because he did talk about another kind of study where they're looking at muscle tissue. They're not actually pulling muscle tissue out, but they're able to look at muscle tissue and see an elevated oxygen rate in the muscle tissue. Now, I don't know if that was foot bath or not, but I mean, it's pretty spectacular opportunities. I asked him, because I did see him at the biohacking event. I was like, I want to rent one of these and use it for some period of time. I know a good friend of mine, you may know Jay Campbell in the peptide space. He just got one, and he's like, I'm doing 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. I kind of didn't query him. He was also at the biohacking conference this last week. Dude. Yeah, sorry. I'm not trying to rub it in that way. That I live stateside.
I'm stuck in New Zealand, everybody. So I can't travel.
Every time you hear that, just think of how beautiful New Zealand is, right? Because we here in the States hear how unbelievably, amazingly beautiful it is, and so we yearn for that. And then
but we don't get the conferences on our back doorstep. The beach and the beautiful Pacific Ocean on my doorstep, but I don't have the Dave Asprey biohacking conference or any of the longevity conferences that you get to go to. No, I am jealous, completely jealous. So I live, virtually through you guys.
And I'm super stoked and lucky because Dave Asprey's event was in Dallas last year. It's in Austin. It was in Austin this year, as well as the Health Optimization Summit, which I think is going to be back in Austin. And Dave Asprey's event is going to be back in Austin. So we're in Houston. That's about a 2.5 hour drive. So it's perfect for us. And it's, from the perspective of the country, it's extremely central. Right. So people from LA and New York have the same flight. You're not kind of favoring one or the other. So it makes sense to keep them in this place. And, Austin, I don't know if you know, has the tagline, keep Austin weird. That's one of their taglines. And so a bunch of weird biohackers who will come in and sit in a tank for 20 minutes. I think we're weird. And like most of society would say we're weird.
No. We're the ones pushing the limits, right? And we're, creating the path for others to follow. And, some of these things, we need more studies and we need more this and we need more that. But hey, if we wait for everything, we can die waiting, Yeah,
where would your mom be? Like, I hear your story and it's inspiring. The effort, the research you jumped into, the expense of a HBOT, not an inexpensive piece of equipment. And you did enough research to convince yourself that that was a thing that was going to move the needle and then purchase it. Like that's an inspiring story. There's so many pain to passion stories. And frankly, most of them don't end well. Right. And yours actually ends well.
Yeah. So far. I mean, none of us are going to live forever. And, you live in this sort of what else is out there that I can get to help mom, so, yeah. But that pushes me constantly. And it's been 10 years now, like 10 years of actually, in her case is like, I wrote a Substack the other day and it was the 7 times she nearly died. So, she's had, besides the aneurysm and the stroke and the brain cancer, also hip fractures, gastrointestinal bleeding, UTIs, sepsis multiple times, and every time I go to that damned hospital, because they're back in the dark ages here, like really back in the dark ages, they're like, she's not going to survive this,
That's what you said the last 5 times.
Yeah, you have to be realistic. Sign this piece of paper, that we won't resuscitate. And I'm just like, excuse my language, but F off with that stuff. Yep. We'll fight. Thanks very much, because you've told us that 100 times. And when you have somebody, and this comes to the mindset piece, Chris, which is probably a good thing to talk about here. The mindset is absolutely everything. Yep. You can overcome so many obstacles, not everything. We're all going to die at some point of something because we didn't, get the right access but the scientists are solving the problems. We're just not getting them in the clinic that quickly. And that's another, thing that, you and I are passionate about, trying to help the sector of the world get known to everybody so that they realize the things that are available, that they can try, that they can do to help themselves. And the mindset of, I am not going to give up, I want to live and I'm going to fight, is a powerful, powerful impetus. Like my mum is just such a rock star in that regard. Like she just does not give up. And when the doctors go to her, look, Isabel, you are dying and there is nothing you can do. And then she just looks at them and comes out, and you don't know my daughter, and you don't know her team, and you don't know. And every time I say, like, Mum, don't listen to them, don't listen to them, she's like, of course I'm not listening to them. Right. And I just love that attitude, right? That attitude of like, whatever. What's my next step, Lisa? What do I do now? What's today? And when I'm working with clients and they're up against it, and say we're working with someone with Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis or cancer or dementia, and I work with lots of people in this space, the closer you are to the cliff, the harder you have to put the brakes on. So you have to go hard, you have to be willing to fight, you have to have the discipline to do the things, and you have to do it for long enough. And most people, in my experience, that's where they fall down. Not because they didn't have a chance at beating it, whatever it was, but because they gave up before they got to the finish line. And as an ultra marathon runner with a history of 25 years of doing the most extreme races, I know how to keep grinding. And Mum's obviously of the same cloth, not as in the athlete sense, but you just keep taking one more step and keep doing the doing, keep doing the grind. The everyday grind is absolutely powerful. And then you can achieve things that are outside the norms. None of these are, slated in the statistics that they'll give you, because they haven't bargained with a fighter. So if you're a fighter, then you've got a hell of a much bigger chance of coming out the other end,
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I've seen you in videos, and I think about my relationship with my mom, who I think is more of a laissez-faire. At one point she asked me, Chris, why are you trying so hard? And in the context of that conversation was like, because I haven't had a six-pack in my life. And just the fact that I'm almost 56 doesn't mean I can't have a six-pack. Like
hell no.
Right? Like that's not mutually exclusive. Also, I feel good. Like I don't have the cravings. Yes, I'm not eating cake, right? But I also don't have cravings for the cake. I'm not missing it that much. I miss it a little. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, when you have that, so I see your mom. And part of mine was like, wow, she's really pushing her mom. It's so cool to hear the story that you're not like it's a push pull, right? Like you're pushing her. She's also pulling you. That's awesome.
Yeah. And when people watch us at, say, at the gym, or me when I'm out on the street with her training, people do think I'm a nasty, horrible person. And look how she's pushing her mum, all of these things. And my mum's on the pathway doing her arm exercises or her squats or something. And they're like, look at me like a complete nutcase. And then some people get it, and some people understand it, and other people just think I'm nasty and horrible. Why don't you let her make her comfortable on the couch? Because comfort is the enemy of life. That's why. Because when you're comfortable, you start to disintegrate. The human body needs to move, and I have to push her sometimes. Like she's sitting on the bicycle in the room next to me doing her exercise cycle. She probably doesn't want to. She'd probably rather sit on the couch, but she knows she has to, because I make her do some stuff. But she is better off for it. And when you challenge an older person, they feel like, I've got a reason to live, because I'm still fighting. You're telling your brain, I'm still in the game. I'm still using my muscles. I'm still pumping weights. I'm still out there doing it. Therefore, I must be still ready to live. And your cells will listen to that, and it will, you're dead a long time. Like life is binary. Like we're getting philosophical here, but life is binary. You are alive or you are dead. There is no in between. And if you're alive, why not fight for every beautiful day on this beautiful planet that we have, together with your loved ones? Because afterwards, you're never coming back. Never, never, never. Yeah. And I think people don't realize that when I've lost loved ones. I've lost a baby. I've lost my father, again, in terrible circumstances with my dad. And I wasn't allowed to do, because he was in the ICU, and I wasn't allowed to do the things that I knew would help him, because it was against the ethics committee and the laws of the hospital. And that's made me even more of an activist to fight, because I didn't get the chance to do what I know could have possibly saved his life in his situation that, I won't go into. But when they're gone, like the devastation of that is just, like I will do anything to postpone that moment. I know that we're all going to die, and I get told that one day she is going to go, Lisa, one day. And I'm like, yeah, and one day we're all going to go, but that's not the point of today.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be today, right?
We'll push it out as far as we can.
So we're about to wrap up. We actually had somebody join in. I'm excited. JJ joined in. Said she just found us. Glad she found us. She's wanting to recover from autoimmune disease. The first thing I think of is I interviewed Tom O'Brien. I don't know if you interviewed Tom O'Brien. You did. Yes?
No, I haven't. No,
okay. So that would be, I would go check out the podcast I did with Tom O'Brien. He wrote the book, The Autoimmune Fix. He's a super smart, super compassionate individual. And then do you have maybe an episode of your podcast that you might steer her towards?
Yeah. So one of the things is a product actually that I just brought out called Rejuvenate Pro, which is aimed at the immune system. Chris has got it.
I got it. It's not even open yet. We're going to have to cover it next time. Like, what is this? I'll start taking it. What should I take? How much should I take? What does that look like?
Yeah.
What's the purpose you were just talking?
Yeah, we'll talk about the whole thing later, but it is aimed at the immune system, and autoimmune disease is part of that. So we went after the aging of the immune system and immunosenescence, which is, basically the aging. As we get older, our ability to fight off the pathogens, our thymus gland involutes over time and gets smaller, and then starts, as a fatty infiltrate by the time you're our age, and it's not working. And that's like the university for your T cells. And so what our formulation does is it works on the gut health side of things, and it also works on transfer factors, immunoglobulins, all these fancy words that I won't go into now, but I would say go and check that out and reach out to me, and I'll send you a couple of episodes to listen to in regards to the immune system. Like, the immune system is very, very, very closely tied with the gut health. So, 70 to 80% of your immune system is in and around the gut. And so you have to work on the gut when you're working on the immune system, and then working on this, improving the thymic architecture, improving the response of your natural killer cells. That's what our product does. So it's working on all of those. So that's a good place to start. And then, there's a heck of a lot of other things. Once you have one autoimmune disease, of course, you're at risk for more, because it is a systemic thing, right? And so if you go up the tree and start working on your immune system and your gut health, that's where I would start. And, please do reach out if you've got any questions. But yeah,
I'm trying to find my episode with Tom O'Brien without the sound coming on. There it is. So let me copy that, and I'll put that in our share copy, so we'll have that direct
technical stuff, Chris,
to that. Cool. All right, well, I actually have to kind of hop off here. This is our first foray. We will be back. Great conversations. I love kind of digging into this, and this is fantastic. I neither one of us was worried that we wouldn't have anything to say, and that proved to be true. Lisa, I appreciate you. I'm glad you kind of reached out to put this together, and we'll get this scheduled for next month, and kind of accruing ideas of things to share and bounce ideas off of each other.
This is just the latest and greatest, guys. So once a month, Chris and I will be on here sharing our latest findings, our latest interviews, what we've learned in that last month. It's all about longevity, health optimization, and biohacking. And make sure that you follow both channels, and share this with your family and friends. Like, share this with other people who might benefit from this content. Make sure you check in a month's time, and we'll be back. And any questions, let us know.
Reach out to us. Thank you, Lisa. Take care.
Bye.